Hey guys, so how about that PS5 reveal? Some of those games look sick! But there was definitely one that stood out for me. So let's talk about Horizon Forbidden West, the sequel to one of my favorite games in the past few years, Horizon Zero Dawn. I am stoked for that game like you wouldn't believe! And it's actually kind of a coincidence. Not long before that, I'd actually decided to revisit the original. I never did a 100% run or anything, so with the benefit of all the free time the quarantine gave me, I decided to correct that. And that's not all. I also finally cracked open the DLC expansion, The Frozen Wilds. So I figure since the new game was announced and I've dipped back into the first one, why not see if my original thoughts on it hold up? Hope you guys are ready to tune in. I'm Riley, and this is Horizon Zero Dawn's Revisited. So I wanted to start by seeing if my initial thoughts on the game have changed at all, and did they? Well, not a whole lot actually. I loved the exploration and the combat, I thought the world was fascinating and the plot was pretty solid. But I also thought the resource management was tedious, certain machines were too much of a chore to deal with, and the side characters could have used some work. For the most part, all that stuff is still true in my eyes. The exploration is still easily my favorite part of the game. The world is massive and gorgeous, no one's arguing that. But the resource management is still pretty annoying. I get why it's in the game, but it still just kind of takes me out of it. It's like this game's equivalent of level grinding, just an irritating chore you pretty much have to deal with if you want to do well. Necessary evils and all that, you know. The combat was, honestly, I'm kinda surprised. It was a lot easier than I remember it being. I think maybe the sheer volume of Overwatch I've been playing might have just trained my aim, so there's that. But then again, it's not like I started the game over. I just went and collected everything I was missing, wrapped up all the challenges and quests, you get the idea. I still had all my upgrades from when I beat the game the first time, including the Shield Weaver armor. You know, that one armor that basically gives you regenerating bonus health? Yeah. I remember being extremely irritated by all the damn birds and, I mean, they're still annoying, but hardly as bad as I remember. Maybe it was the armor, maybe I just became a better shot, but I enjoyed the combat a lot more this time around. I do still think it's kinda bogus that some of the humans are actually harder to deal with than the machines, but whatever. Then there's the plot. The plot itself was always fine, it was never really the problem. A really interesting world to explore and backstory to discover. The problem was that the supporting cast just kinda comes and goes like a breeze. You don't have a whole lot of consistent supporting cast members. Aside from a small handful, most of the characters you meet don't even really qualify as supporting cast. They're just recurring characters who barely factor into anything, but hey, at least they show up to help you in the final battle, right? It's kind of underwhelming. And the sequel doesn't look like it's going to do anything to remedy that problem. Well, it's a small thing. I also think Aloy herself is great, though the flashpoints and the dialogue options could have been stronger. There aren't a whole lot of really meaningful changes based on your decisions. Most of it just determines how Aloy's personality develops and how she'll respond to stuff on her own at certain points. There are some consequences to some of your choices, but none you honestly feel all that much. This is actually something new. I noticed it while doing some research on the dialogue choices. I didn't even know there were flashpoints until I did that, honestly. That's how little they seem to matter. So I hope the sequel boosts that aspect a bit. But yeah, those were all of my initial thoughts, and like I said, not a lot changed. But let's move on to talk about the Frozen Wilds DLC to see if that was an improvement at all. So I went into the DLC not really knowing what to expect. I never really looked into any of the trailers or anything. Was it just a new area, some new side quests? Sure enough, it had all that, but it also contained a sort of mini arc, which was a nice surprise in a way. After learning that there even was an arc to it, I kind of expected it'd be treated like post-game content, but No. And really, it makes sense. After all, when you beat the final mission, the game acknowledges that you did it by unlocking New Game Plus and all that, but the actual in-game universe just dumps you right back to before you actually take on that last quest. It pretends you never did it, so post-game content would be weird. Nah, the story of the Frozen Wilds is supposed to take place sometime during the events of the main game. It's probably that they didn't know how to make it fit in with the main plot. That, or it just wasn't finished in time for the core release, so they delayed it and held onto it as DLC. I can't say anything for sure about that without doing more research. What I can say, though, is that I really dug it. A lot, actually. So much, in fact, that I'd argue its storytelling chops are even superior to the main games in a lot of ways, despite it being much, and I do mean much, shorter. Like I said, my biggest gripe with the main game is that there's really no supporting cast aside from Silence, and he's not even physically around for most of the game. He's just a disembodied voice. So Aloy doesn't spend enough time around any characters for the relationships to feel impactful. Not after Rost dies anyway. And that's a shame because I did like the majority of those side characters that are peppered throughout the game. This DLC, though, actually kind of fixes that by giving you 2 good supporting characters for the duration of the plot. They're not joined to you at the hip or anything, but they're important and they're around enough for you to actually become invested in them. The history each of them has is interesting and important to the story, and they overall make the story of the Frozen Wilds a lot more engaging than it'd probably be without them. And there are some pretty huge plot reveals, so that's no small feat. Aside from that, the new area is a lot of fun to explore. I especially love the effect of the snow getting all over your armor as you trudge through the, frozen wilds, but holy hell, those new machines are tough! They hit like tanks, man! But anyway, the side quests were also fun. I don't recall having any problems with any of them anyway. Make of all that what you will. So yeah, those are my revisited thoughts on Horizon Zero Dawn and my impressions of the Frozen Wilds DLC. What about you guys? What did you think of all this? You as amped as I am for the sequel? Drop a comment below and give that like button a zap while you're down there. Links to the site, Patreon, and all our other social media are down in the description too. Subscribe, ring the bell, you get the idea. I'm Riley, bowing out. Keep up the awesome and stay tuned!